Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Keisha, and today I'm going to be giving you some middle grade recommendations. So I'm really excited because we are slowly approaching middle grade March, so I thought it would be a great time to give you guys some middle grade recommendations. I read middle grade a lot because as a children's librarian, I like to read children's books to keep myself kind of in the know of what is popular with the kids and what's new and coming out. But also, I just genuinely love middle grade books. I even host a middle grade book club at my library with some of my younger kiddos, and it is one of my favorite programs that I've ever done. I absolutely love it. I love the kids I get to work with, and I love reading all of these books. So with all that being said, today I wanted to give you some middle grade recommendations, and I have 20 on my list, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. I've broken these up into some categories. They're all middle grade, obviously, but I'm going to start with the spooky books because I clearly love spooky middle grade books. Coraline by Neil Gaiman is one of my absolute favorites. I actually watched this movie before I ever read the book, and now I have both seen the movie multiple times and read the original book, the illustrated, and the graphic novel edition. So if you don't already know, Coraline is about a girl named Coraline who is moved into this new flat with her family, and she's not really happy with her current situation. Her parents are kind of ignoring her, not having much to do with her, and then she finds this door in her apartment that her mom says leads to the other flat that is unoccupied and empty, and it's been boarded up. But one night, Coraline goes through this door and finds out that it has not been boarded up. She goes to the other side and finds out that she has another mother and another father that seem to be a little bit more likable to her right now than her current family. They have given her everything that she wants. They're cooking her great meals, giving her the clothes that she has asked for. But there is one condition. The mother would like for Coraline to stay with them for forever, but she has to sew buttons into her eyes. So this story ends up taking a pretty creepy turn. I have heard that both young kids and adults alike have had issues with this being extremely creepy and uncomfortable. I'm not one that has that issue. I read this with my middle grade book club and they all loved it. They did think it was creepy, but they loved the creepiness, which I'm so glad that it didn't scare them because that was definitely a concern. But they enjoyed it, and I know lots of people my age and older that enjoy this as well. So I would recommend this if you're looking for a creepy book. I also just love this cover. I don't know if you can see, there's a silhouette on the cover of the other mother and trying to sew buttons into Coraline's eyes. It is fantastic. I gave this book 4 stars. It is one of my all-time favorites, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who is trying to get into middle grade and likes creepy things. Next up, I have another Neil Gaiman book called The Graveyard Book, and I do believe this is a little bit of a bridge from middle grade to young adult, but I still classify this one as middle grade. This story follows a boy named Bod, and Bod has been through quite a tragic event. His parents have been killed by the man Jack, and now the man Jack is after Bod. But Bod, luckily as a baby, crawled away to a nearby graveyard and has been raised by ghosts. So this definitely has a huge family element in this story. It is also very creepy. And Bod ends up going on a journey to kind of discover himself and discover who he wants to be. It's a coming of age story and it's super cute. I highly recommend this. It is creepy, but I don't know. I don't feel like it's as creepy as Coraline, but it's a great book. I gave it 4 stars, and I've also read the graphic novel version of this, which I think I might have enjoyed even better than this one because I got to visualize things that were hard for me to visualize here. So I would recommend both of those. So as you can probably see, I'm a huge Neil Gaiman fan, but I'm also a huge fan of Victoria Schwab, and she wrote the Cassidy Blake series. So we have City of Ghosts and Tunnel of Bones, and she has the 3rd book in the series coming out in March called Bridge of Souls, which I'm so stoked to get my hands on. This series follows our main character, Cassidy Blake, who has had a near-death experience, and now she can see through the veil or see ghosts. And she also has a ghost best friend named Jacob, who happens to be the one that saved her from her near-death experience. What's funny about Cassidy's life is that she can see ghosts, but her parents are actually ghost hunters, and they cannot see ghosts, nor do they know that Cassidy can see them. But her parents have just been signed off to star in this new television series where they will go all around the world to the world's most haunted places and try to find ghosts there and tell different legends and stories. And so in the first book, they go to Edinburgh, Scotland, and in the second book, they go to Paris, France, and the catacombs. I think both of these books are absolutely fantastic, and one thing that I really love about them is in the paperback versions, There are author Q&A and photos in the back. And in the back with that, there are photos of the different places that Cassidy visits throughout the story, because these ghost stories are actually based off of local legend. So you see pictures of where Cassidy has visited in the story, and these are all real life places based off of real life legends. So I think that's super cool to get that aspect from real life in there as well. Cassidy faces some really scary ghosts in both of these books, and like I said, I'm so excited about Bridge of Souls. I highly recommend this series. If you are looking for a good spooky middle grade read, this is where it's at. Another book that I absolutely adore that would be considered a more spooky book is Nightbooks by J.A. White. This book stars our main character, Alex, and Alex has been captured by the witch Natasha. In order to survive every night, Alex must read an original story from his nightbooks to Natasha, and as he runs out of stories, he's having to also write more. There's also another victim to this capture, which is his friend Yasmin, who has told him that there is no escape. She's been there a long time, and she has not found a way out, and the only way that seems to be the way out is by using Natasha's keys, which she keeps around her neck at all times. So Alex decides he's not going to give up that easily, and he is going to search for his own way out. This book draws a lot off of Arabian Nights and Hansel and Gretel, so it's a little bit of a fairy tale reimagining, and it's like got dark fairy tale vibes and stuff like that. I really enjoyed this book. I didn't really expect much going into it because I hadn't heard a lot of people talk about it, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was so good. And like I said, once again, if you are looking for a good spooky middle grade recommendation, and one that features dark fairy tales and a little bit of a reimagining of some well-loved classics, this is the book for you. The last spooky recommendations I have for you are Small Spaces and Dead Voices by Katherine Arden. This is a series that I absolutely love. She also has another book coming out soon called Dark Waters. These all follow the same main characters, Ollie, Brian, and Coco. And in this first book, Ollie ends up finding this book that this woman is trying to throw into a pond or a stream or something. And Ollie loves the book, so she's trying to save this book. She takes it from this woman, she reads it, and it's called Small Spaces, and it's about the smiling man and these two men that have disappeared years ago and were never found. And now Ollie is going on a field trip to this farm with her friends, and she realizes that this is the same place that was talked about that the two boys disappeared from in the book, but it's just under a different name now. So now Ollie and her friends are faced with the smiling man and some pretty scary scarecrows. I will say that I will never look at scarecrows the same way again. This is the book that spooked me beyond any other middle grade. Like, you guys think Coraline is scary. This spooked me worse than Coraline. Like, Coraline didn't even freak me out, but maybe that's because I was prepared for it because of the movie. But I do think this is very reminiscent of Goosebumps, but maybe a little bit creepier than that. And then the second book is the same main characters, and it follows them to an old ski lodge that used to be an orphanage/school. So you've got some spooky elements going on there as well. The series is phenomenal. Katherine Arden is a great middle grade writer, and like I said, I can't wait for Dark Waters to come out. This is another one that comes highly recommended from me. These are 5-star books, and I absolutely love them. The next book I have, I didn't really know what category to put it in. It's a little bit of a contemporary and mystery and magical realism kind of tied into one, and that is The Mysterious Disappearance of Aidan S., as told by his brother, by David Levithan. So this book just came out, and I had to pick it up because I love David Levithan series every day, and I knew that I would like this one too, and I did. It was a really cute story. It's about this boy named Aidan who has disappeared for 7 days or 6 days, and when he comes back, everyone's wondering where he is, and he tells his brother Luke where he was, and he says, nobody's gonna believe me. And it's one of those stories where he says, I went to think like Narnia or Wonderland or those kind of stories. But we're not getting the perspective of the main character that goes into these places. We're getting the perspective of Luke, his brother, who is on the other side and trying to figure out if he believes his brother went to this place or not, what's happening. His family's trying to figure it out. The police are trying to figure it out because people had been searching for Aidan for all of these days. So this is a great take on, I think, a very popular plot. It's just from the other side. I really enjoyed reading from that perspective. I thought this was a good book. At the end, I feel like I was still waiting for something more, and I would actually love to see more from David Levithan in this series and hear more from Aidan and Luke. but we'll see. I don't know if this is supposed to be a series. As far as I know, it's not, but I would love to hear more as far as where Luke went and what happens and all of this different stuff. I think it would be great, but I did rate this book 4 stars, and I do think it was a very interesting read. Next, I want to talk about a couple of historical fiction. So the first one I have is Belle, Teal by Ann M. Martin. You may recognize this name because she is also the author of The Babysitters Club, which I never read, but I read this one and I loved this book. So this book is about a girl named Belle Teal, and her life is not easy, but she feels very rich with love. She lives with her mom and her grandmother, who take very good care of her. And one day she goes to school and she meets 2 new kids. One of them is a brat, for lack of a better term. It's this new girl. She seems very spoiled and full of herself. And then she also meets a new guy that's in her class, and he is a young black boy. This is during a time where schools were being desegregated, and there was lots of tension with the parents when the schools were being desegregated, and Belle Teal gets to see that firsthand. And one of the things I love about this book is that her mom and her grandmother tell her, don't treat that boy any different. There's nothing different about him from you. And Belle Teal is kind of confused and thinking, well, why would I think there was anything different about him? And I love the innocence of that. I love that she has not been soiled by society to think some kind of way about blacks or whites or anything else. So I love that aspect of the story, and seeing the innocence of Belle Teal and seeing her learn how black people were treated wrongly and how she stands up for her new friend. This is a great book. If you've never read it before, I would highly recommend it. It's about a 4 star for me. It is a pretty average read, but I don't know, there's just something that always draws me back to this. It's definitely nostalgic for me, but I do think if you've never read it, it's worth a try. I've not heard anybody talk about this before, so I would highly recommend Belle Teal. Next is another well-loved historical fiction, which is Number the Stars by Lois Lowry. This is a Newbery Award winner, and rightfully so. This book follows Anne-Marie Johansen. She lives in Copenhagen, Denmark, and this is in 1943 during World War II, and she ends up having to protect her best friend Ellen Rosen because her best friend is Jewish. And so her family ends up taking Ellen in and pretending like Ellen is a part of Anne-Marie's family, and Anne-Marie is going to have to make some pretty hard decisions and go on a pretty serious journey, have to be heroic in certain instances to protect her friend Ellen. So if you like World War II historical fiction, this is a great one. It's really short. It would make for a good quick read, and Lois Lowry is always a really good author to read from. I really liked her Giver series as well. If you have not read that one, I would recommend that one as well. Next, I have a few classics, which you will not hear me talk a lot about on my channel because I don't usually like classics, but children's classics are so good. So the first one I want to talk about is Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. Also, I have to show off this beautiful edition. I can't remember what edition this is, but it's so pretty and I love it so much. So this isn't a book that I'm nostalgic about per se. I did not read this as a child. I did not actually read this book until last year, and I loved it. I had seen the movie, I'd seen the animated version and the version with Dakota Fanning, and I loved both of them, but I had never read the book, and I thought it was phenomenal. You guys probably know the story of Charlotte's Web, but it's about Wilbur, and Wilbur is this new baby pig that Fern, the farmer's daughter, kind of takes under her wing, and she wants to raise Wilbur, and they don't want to raise him because he's a runt and they don't think he'll be good for anything, so her dad wants to kill him, and like Fern stops him. So now Wilbur's growing up and he makes friends with all of the farm animals and Charlotte the spider. And I won't say anything more than that if you don't know the story. I just think you should pick it up based off of that because it's so good. It's a classic. It's really short. It's a great one. 5 stars all the way around, and I actually already want to reread this one even though I only read it a couple of months ago. Next up, I do have some nostalgic books that I consider to be children's classics. They may not be to you, but they are to me. And that is The Mouse and the Motorcycle and Runaway Ralph by Beverly Cleary. These books are so prized to me. This is actually the book that I had from my childhood, and the second one is not, but man, I love these books so much. I remember, I believe I was in about 5th grade when my teacher read these books to our class, and they're just so cute. They came out in the 30s, which I had no idea about until I read them again recently, but they're so good. They're a little bit dated, but it's about this mouse named Ralph, and he meets our main character whose name is Kevin, I believe. Keith, not Kevin, Keith. And Keith has this little toy motorcycle, and Ralph just wants to ride around and have a good time in this little hotel on it. And that's basically what the story's about. And then we have Runaway Ralph, which just goes on through that story. And there's also a third book in the series that I've never read, and it's called Ralph S. Mouse. I don't know how I've never read it, but I definitely need to. This is a cute series if you've never read it before. Like I said, it's from the 30s, so I do think it should be considered a classic if it's not. I just think Ralph is an adorable character, and I love following him through these books, so I would also recommend these. Another classic is Roald Dahl's Matilda, which is a well-loved book, I believe, in this community. If you don't know Matilda, you are missing out, and I highly recommend this one. The movie is good. The book is good. I saw the movie before I ever read the book, and I think it holds up either way. I love both of them about the same. I think I rated Matilda 4 stars, but it's such a good book. It's magical realism, a girl who loves books, a girl who's struggling with her family life and finds solace in this teacher. It's kind of got a found family aspect. I love it. I highly recommend it. You should pick it up. And lastly, with the classics, we have Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. I had mentioned before on my channel that this is not the edition that I have read, but I will be reading it soon. I read the Great Illustrated Classics edition, which was a more condensed version, so I have not read all of these pages, and I'm so stoked to read them. Anne of Green Gables seems to also be very well loved in this community, and it was one of those books that I didn't know if I would like. I kept thinking, well, this is just going to be one of those like plain Jane stories that I won't really like very much. But I really loved it, and I don't know how to explain it. Like, the writing was really simple, and the story was pretty simple, but there was just something magical there. Ellen Montgomery just really knows how to tell a good story, so I would highly recommend picking up Anne. If you have not tried any classics, this is a great place to start. The next category is fantasy and adventure, and the first book that I have is Fortunately the Milk, again by Neil Gaiman, because we love him, right? So this is also illustrated by Chris Riddell. I love when Neil Gaiman and Chris Riddell come together and combine the writing and illustrations together. It just makes for a great whimsical story. This book has so many great illustrations in it. I swear, like, it's just my favorite thing in the world. I love it. It's so whimsical and magical, and it's about this dad who forgot to get the milk. He went to the grocery store and he forgot to get the milk, and now his kids want to have cereal for breakfast, but he has to go get some milk. So he goes out, and it takes him a while to come back. And when he comes back, he tells his kids the story of what took him so long to get this milk. He went on lots of adventures. There's time traveling here. There's all kinds of crazy characters. There are aliens and intergalactic police, pirates, an angry volcano, gods demanding human sacrifice, all that different fun stuff. So this is a super fun and whimsical read. It's very adventurous. It was something that I didn't know what to expect from, but I should have known it was going to be great because it was Neil Gaiman and Chris Riddell, and they are the perfect pair. Next, I have The House with Chicken Legs by Sophie Anderson. This is a beautiful edition of this book, and I cannot wait to own all of Sophie Anderson's books. I have The Girl Who Speaks Bear, but I need to get A Castle of Tangled Magic because these are all beautiful. Sophie Anderson, I think, is going to be one of my favorite writers. This is the only book I've read by her so far, but I think I'm going to enjoy all of her books. And this is a bit of a Baba Yaga retelling. So we have Baba Yaga and The House with Chicken Legs. But our main character here's name is Marinka, and Marinka just wants a normal life. Baba Yaga is priming Marinka to be the next Yaga to take over. And Baba Yaga, if you don't already know, kind of serves as a guide between worlds to guide the spirits into the afterlife, and Marinka's not really sure that she wants to do that. She wants to see the world, and so she rebels a little bit, and this is her story. This is such a cute story. Marinka gets on my nerves at some points in time, but it's because of her age, and you would expect nothing less of a child of this age who is just wanting to be themselves and explore the world and figure out who they want to be instead of being told who to be. So I can definitely understand that. I think this is a great story. It was really fast-paced. The illustrations in here as well are super cute. I love them. I cannot say enough good things about this book. I read this with the 3 Blondes in a Book Club, and I think we all pretty much liked it. So I would recommend this if you like retellings or stories with a more magical folktale kind of aspect. This is a great one to pick up. Next up, I've got Percy Jackson and the Olympians. If you have not read this series, I also think you're missing out. I don't want to tell you what to read by any means, but this is a series that it surprised me, I guess. My husband read this series growing up, and then we got married, and he said, you should read this series. And I had wanted to read Harry Potter at the time because I had not, and they were very large and intimidating, but this is kind of, I believe, up there with Harry Potter, and they are shorter. So I decided to read this series, and wow, it's so good. It's full of Greek mythology, and I don't want to say too much about it because I could very easily spoil this. but it follows Percy as he is finding out that he is part Greek god, and you probably can tell by the cover what Greek god is his father, but we won't talk about that in case you don't know. And so he gets to go on all of these quests, and I won't say anything else, but this is so good, and I highly recommend it. All of these books are like, the whole series is 5 stars. It's so good. I also have the Heroes of Olympus series, which is more of a young adult. I think this kind of bridges middle grade and young adult as well as Percy grows up, but I still need to read all of the Heroes of Olympus series. I've only read The Lost Hero, so I will update y'all if I read those anytime soon. But Percy Jackson and the Olympians is so good. So this is great for a fantasy, adventure, mythology kind of story if you're looking for something like that. Okay, we're almost done. I have 5 graphic novel recommendations for you, and I wanted to keep this short because I do have a graphic novel recommendations video coming. So I've limited this to 5 because most of the graphic novels I love are middle grade. So I'm going to start with my favorite, which is I probably should end with my favorite, but I'm going to start with it. My all-time favorite graphic novel right now is this middle grade called The OK Witch by Emma Steinkellner. This is so cute. It follows our character. She is 13 years old. Her name is Moth, and Moth loves all things witchy. And she's kind of like weird in school. She's not the popular kid. She gets picked on. And then she finds out one day she is a witch, and she comes from a lineage of witches. This story reminds me a lot of Halloween Town. There are very much Halloween Town aspects in there. And it also reminds me of the Salem Witch Trials. So combine both of those things, put them in a story, and this is it. There's also a talking cat, which is always great in a story. I cannot say enough good things about this. I don't want to say much about it because I don't want to spoil it. I want you to read it. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's such a good graphic novel, and the illustrations are beautiful. This is a great book to read around Halloween, but honestly, like, I would pick it up any time of the year because it's just that good. Next, I have Ghosts by Raina Telgemeier. This is another favorite. It's really hard for me to pick an all-time favorite. I say The OK Witch is, but this is also really good. This follows our main characters, Katrina and Maya, and Katrina and her family are moving out to California because her little sister is sick. She has cystic fibrosis, and conditions out here and doctors and everything are better for her there. So they're having to move, and Katrina's not super happy about it, but she knows it's what's best for her sister. And when they move out there, they learn about Dia de los Muertos, and they learn that there are ghosts in this town that they're living in. And Maya really wants to meet a ghost, but Kat does not. And so she kind of has to come to terms with some things and put herself behind her and move forward for her sister. And there's reasons why Maya wants to meet ghosts, and I think that just adds even more wholesomeness and depth to the story. I will not spoil it for you, but this is such a great book. Once again, the illustrations are beautiful, and that's really what gets me with graphic novels is the illustrations. I have a very particular style that I like, and these last couple books that I've shown you are ones that I absolutely love. So I would recommend this one. It's super cute. It's a great story. It's whimsical and magical, but it's also really wholesome. It's a great family story, so I would highly recommend this one as well. I have 3 more books to talk about, but I don't own them, so I will be popping up pictures of them right here. So first up is Roller Girl by Victoria Jameson. This is also another favorite of mine. It follows our main character named Astrid. It took me a second to remember her name. It's been a minute since I've read this, but Astrid has always done everything with her best friend Nicole, and now she wants to join roller derby, but Nicole wants to join a dance academy, and she joins with this other girl. And so this is a story of friendship and a story of kind of coming of age, and as Astrid's growing up and realizing that sometimes friends stay and sometimes they don't. Sometimes you'll have different interests and how you can work through that. And then it's also Astrid's story of learning how to do roller derby, which I found super interesting because I did not really know anything about roller derby before, and now I'm really fascinated with it, and I think it's a really neat thing to learn about. I think this is a really great book all around. Like I said, it's adventurous in the sense of her learning how to do the roller derby thing, but it's also a really good book as far as learning about friendships and growing up and what that means. So I do recommend this one as well. It's one of my favorites, and I actually really want to reread that one really soon. Next, I have 2 series. The first one I want to talk about is Space Boy by Stephen McCraney. If you have not read Space Boy, once again, I think you're missing out because it's so good. It's such a simple series. And I say simple as in like it's pretty quick to read and short, but man, there are 8, what do you call them? There are 8 volumes out right now, and the 9th one comes out in March, which I cannot wait to get my hands on. This story follows our main character, whose name I have briefly forgotten, but she can pick up on people's flavors, so she feels like her mom has a kind of minty flavor and her dad has kind of like a hot cocoa flavor, and she can read people by their flavors, which I find super interesting. And she lives in a space station with her parents, but then her dad ends up losing his job as a miner, and so they have to move back to Earth, and now she's losing her best friend, who is going to age because she has to go into cryogenic sleep to get to Earth, and now her friend's going to be like 30 and she's still going to be a child, which is a very traumatic thing, I think, to happen when you lose your best friend in that way. She does still communicate with her, but it's very much different because her best friend is grown up. And then she also meets this boy who does not have a flavor. And this is all about Space Boy and where he came from and who he is and what's going on. And it's very sci-fi and adventurous, and it's a great series, and I love it so much. Like I said, I'm excited for the next one to come out. If you like sci-fi stuff, or if you want to try sci-fi, I think this is a good one. I don't usually lean towards sci-fi, but I did really enjoy this one, so I would recommend it. And lastly, we have Amulet by Kazu Kibuishi. This is a great series. It has 8 books out as well, and I think the last one is coming out later this year, which is kind of bittersweet. It is a very adventurous series. It's kind of sci-fi and fantasy elements weaved together, and I am probably not going to explain this to do it justice, but oh man, it's one of the best graphic novels I think there ever is. But if you're looking for a good graphic novel series, this is it. So it follows our main characters, Emily and Naveen, and Emily's grandfather has just passed away, and she finds out that he was a stonekeeper, and she is now going to be a stonekeeper, which is kind of spoilery, but it's not really, because you kind of know that's going to happen. So I'm sorry if I spoiled anybody. Please don't yell at me in the comments. But it tells you in the first book, this is what's going to happen. The second book's called The Stonekeeper's Curse. It's kind of obvious, but you don't know what a stonekeeper is, so it's not a complete spoiler. Anyway, so Emily and Naveen's mom ended up getting lost in a city underneath their house in the basement, and I'm not doing a good job of explaining this, but they go to rescue her, and they have to rescue this world, and they're like these evil elf people. And when I say elves, don't think Santa's elves, think like goblin elf. That's what I'm trying to say, not even elves, goblins. But yeah, and there's a little bunny, a pink bunny named Misket that is like kind of their helpmate, and then we have a fox character. I can't remember his name at the moment, but they're all kind of crazy, neat characters in this book, and it's just, I don't know, I don't even know how to explain what they're doing or what it's about, and I don't want to, because I don't want to spoil it, because I feel like you need to read it. But if you're looking for an adventurous fantasy novel, this is going to be a great one for you to pick up. All right, y'all, that is all of the middle grade recommendations that I have for you today. Hopefully I mentioned some that you have not heard of before. If you have read any of these, let me know in the comments what you thought. And if you have any middle grade recommendations for me, please let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for new recommendations, though I do try to keep myself pretty in the know. I will also leave links to some YouTubers that I follow for middle grade recommendations, and I will also leave a link to the middle grade March announcement that is going to be taking place with Krista from Books and Jams, Katie from A Life Between Words, and Amanda from The Curly Reader. Those are all lovely ladies that all have great middle grade recommendations. I will leave their channels linked down below as well. Before you leave, if you don't mind, hit the subscribe button and the bell if you want to get notifications for any time I post a new video, and go ahead and hit the like button as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!